Okay, let's get started, and then I'm gonna go eat food. All right, week 6. Let's just get it going. I had a pretty busy week. I had my birthday stream, which went. I'm not gonna lie, not as good as I wanted it to go, but it still went pretty well. I ended up getting a lot more burned out than I thought I did. I had a pretty good. What's that game called? Oh my god, I had a pretty good Dark Souls run. We got through the game pretty quickly. Like around 4 hours. What really sucked about Dark Souls was that I needed Titanite chunks, and I spent almost 40 minutes farming and didn't get any Titanite chunks, which has never happened to me before. So we could have gotten a really, really good like sub 3 hours 30 minutes run, but we just didn't get it. Anyway, a video that I think if you care about video games as a whole, in the competitive scene and esports scene, I guess, so not video games as a whole, but esports as a whole, Brian Kibler released a video talking about Magic and Hearthstone's new competitive league system, and I think it's really fascinating. I don't care that much about Magic, but I do care about Hearthstone, but the sort of things he talks about can actually translate to any sort of league structure that's being created in the future, because there are a lot of leagues being created, like the Overwatch League, or for some reason the fighting game scene decided to have leagues, like a fighting game league or a Smash Brothers league or something. And I think he talks about a lot of stuff that is worth watching. I would say it's worth your 20 minutes of your time to sort of watch that. And then I was a little bit busy. I was gonna release this video. I was trying to make this video a couple of days ago, but I decided I was gonna finish the one I was already working on, which was the Smash Ultimate Classic Modes video. On a side note, making these videos once a week has actually been pretty good for me. I feel like I'm actually consistently motivated to keep editing stuff and keep making stuff, even though I've gotten a little bit lazier when it comes to these videos. That's because I'm a lot more invested in spending a lot more time working on actual stuff, which I think this has been good for me. I know it's like might be annoying that like once a week you have to look at not a real video and go, oh my god, why am I subscribing to this guy? I subscribe for Resident Evil stuff, for Warcraft stuff, for Zelda stuff, and I'm just getting him talking about his life. Like this sucks. But hopefully you're able to just ignore these videos or skip through them or whatever every week, because it is helping me make more stuff, and I'm actually really motivated to work on a new 20 to 30 minute best game ever video, which I'm gonna get to work on as soon as I'm done eating lunch. It's not even a joke. It's not even a joke. And then we still have the big video that I really want to do, but it's gonna take a while. I'm gonna stop mentioning it, because then I think the more I keep, I don't know, maybe I will keep mentioning it just to make sure that I keep doing it, because that ODST video is not getting done soon. That's on the back burner, man. I got so many other things I want to do. I'm just not in the mood. Oh, I forgot to write this down. Oh my god, don't forget. There's a Halo PC stress test, beta test, that's coming out, I believe, in June. PC Gamer released some stuff talking about it. I'll have a link here. I'll put it in the video. Wow, oh my god, that's important. I can't believe I forgot to write that down in my notes. Yeah, so that's happening. Anyway, in terms of video games I've been playing, I'm playing a lot of Smash Ultimate with my friends and with the people from my Discord, which you're more than welcome to join. And if you want to play Smash with me, you're more than welcome to hit me up and ask me to play Smash. And if I'm not busy, we'll do it. It's been a lot of fun. I've been doing a lot better. Projectile characters are really obnoxious with on-stream stuff, but off-stream, I'm still doing pretty good with my projectile characters, which is what I like doing. I really, really like Toon Link. I've been having a lot of fun. I'm trying to learn some other guys, but it is what it is. And I've also played a little bit of Bloodstained, Ritual of the Moon. I've only played like 2 hours of it. I've been having a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I've been pretty distracted with some other stuff, like streaming or working on new videos or etc. Real life stuff. So I haven't been able to play a whole lot of it, but oh man, dude, it's been so good. It's been so good. And then the last thing I want to talk about before we get to the meat and potatoes of the video is I streamed Symphony of the Night last night, and for the first time ever, I did like a real professional speedrun glitch. It's a super easy glitch. It just requires you to hit one button really early on in the game. It's called Death Skip, and it allows me to skip a cutscene that normally takes away all of your gear, but it just keeps all of, but because I skipped the cutscene, it didn't take away any of my gear, so I've got to go through the game with the best gear ever. I kind of had a really bad route, so the game took like an hour and 50 or an hour and 40 minutes instead of however long a speedrun takes. But that's still an hour and 40 minutes is the fastest I've ever beaten Symphony of the Night. So I am still very excited. I think that's really cool. I've tried doing Death Skip before and I always mess it up, despite the fact that it is very easy to do. So I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty happy about that. Anyway, so the last thing I did is I recently, within the past month, I've officially beaten every main Resident Evil title. And so I decided to go to a tier list, because every time I go to tiermaker.com and I try to fill out these tier makers, I go, I don't remember this game that much. Oh, it turns out I've only played 10 out of the 20 games in this series. So maybe my tier maker list isn't as good as I thought it was, right? But now I officially can make a Resident Evil tier list, because I have played every Resident Evil game. And so I went and did that. I'm going to put, the rest of this video is just going to be me talking about that tier list. It's a pre-recorded thing that I already did. So you can pretty much turn the video off now unless you're interested in my tier list. And it's also a tier list with like an asterisk. It's not a real thing. Like, this is currently my current thoughts, but I haven't played all of these games recently, and I haven't played them as much as I have others. Like, I've only played Code Veronica once, as opposed to Resident Evil 4, which I've beaten 10 times, right? Or Remake, which I've beaten way more than 10 times, So the video is not, like, entirely balanced or fair, and I actually have considered that that's the Resident Evil video I make this year, is the big tier list video. So this is kind of like a secret demo Resident Evil video, like an outlined thing. If you're patient enough and you care about my Resident Evil stuff and you want to kind of add in feedback or recommendations or something like that for the next Resident Evil video, this is sort of like the demo test, the open beta, I guess. But no one ever makes it. I don't think, not a lot of people watch these videos as opposed to the other ones. But if you're interested, I'm just going to play the thing, and then that's going to be the end of the video. So, hey, thanks a lot for watching. And, as usual, feel free to leave the usual what games you're playing, any news of new things coming out, if you're interested in any of the stuff that I talked about. Whoops, etc., etc. Have a good week, and hopefully I'll have a real video, again, another one, but like a bigger one that means more, soon. So yeah, thanks a lot. Take it easy.
And lose lives and just eat our resources. Most of the foot soldiers in this game are hard-coded.
All right, we're ready to do the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the Resident Evil tier list from tiermaker.com, which has been a pretty addictive thing. I think a lot of people have been making their own tier lists of stuff lately. And recently, this year, I've now officially beaten every Resident Evil game. Every Resident Evil game that matters, as far as I'm concerned. And I kind of wanted to make a tier list, but it's also like an asterisk. Like, I'm going to make an actual video about this sometime down the line when I replay them a lot, because some games I've only ever beaten once, while other games I've beaten upwards of 15 times, right? And that's not like a really fair comparison to be like, oh, I think this game is like less than this. Like, I'm sure my opinion would change if I spend more time with some games than with others. So we're just going to get started. And here we have, I guess we'll just go in order of how games were released then. And it's going to start with Resident Evil 1, and I think it's just a solid game. I think this is really fine. I got pretty spoiled by playing other games before Resident Evil 1, which I think just do better stuff. And also, unfortunately, I played the director's cut, which had like pretty awful music. I think the music was not very good. But ignoring that, it's very memeable, Jill Sandwich, etc. But it's just like, it does everything on a baseline. I think it's a really good standing point of whether or not games are better or worse than the original Resident Evil. And I think based off this list, most games are going to be looking a lot better than Resident Evil. And I think that's totally fine, because the original OG RE game is solid. I think it's a totally reasonable, fun experience. but I don't think it does anything great or spectacular above any other game. Or I don't think it does anything spectacular compared to other games in the series that we're going to get to. Well, right now, Resident Evil 2 is super, super fun. I think I didn't really appreciate Resident Evil 2 until I played it right after RE1. It adds so much stuff, so much content. The story gets a lot better. There's a lot more reasons to replay it than just beat the game really fast. It's just, I think the police station was also a lot more engaging than the mansion. And I think the addition of some other stuff like Mr. X and the liquors were really, really cool. There's a little bit more to the game with the A and B routes for between two characters, so 4 different ways to play the game as opposed to 2 different ways to play the game. And while Claire still remains a little bit easier than Leon, it's not like so objectively Jill is better than Chris. So I don't know. It's one of those things where 2, I just had such a blast playing it. Such an unbelievable step up. And 2 does have there has a lot more zombies in it than the original Mansion, but it's not like too many zombies. It does get a little bit action oriented at points, but I also felt like that's good. That's like the RE formula. And the police station was really engaging and a lot of fun, and also once you got some more action-based stuff, it definitely started feeling a lot more bombastic and intense and interesting than 1's more linear action-based ending. All right, so the next one is Resident Evil 3, and I think Resident Evil 3 sits pretty close here in between these two. I definitely think RE3 is better than Resident Evil 1, for sure, but I didn't enjoy it as much as Resident Evil 2, and I think that's because I've beaten Resident Evil 2 4 times, A and B for both Leon and Claire, and I've only beaten Nemesis once. But if I give Resident Evil 3 more time, maybe I'm going to rate it higher, I don't know, but my biggest problem that I had with RE3, we'll get the problem out of the way first, is that there are a ton of enemies, and like these corridors that you're fighting them in are just very linear, straight lines. So it's not like there's a lot to engage with. It's just like you can't weave your way in and out of most of them. You kind of just have to suck it up and either waste ammo or take damage. And I'm just like I'm not a fan of doing either of those. And that kind of like really built like sort of a small amount of like resentment and like disappointment in the game. But at the same time, Nemesis is super good. I think having him chase you around made him like easily the scariest guy who chases you, kind of video game, and I found that to be like really, really engaging. I also felt they had that multiple choice option that kind of made the choices feel a little bit more dynamic and not predetermined, where you get to make choices on the fly and not like, oh, I start Claire A and that means A or X, Y, and Z is going to happen, as opposed to Resident Evil 3 where a whole bunch of different choices can happen. I found Resident Evil 3 to be really, really good. Again, this isn't like S tier, A tier, B tier. It's not a B game. Resident Evil 3 is super, super good, right? I just don't think it's on the same level as Resident Evil 2. For me, anyway. I just didn't... After beating Resident Evil 2, I wanted to beat it 3 more times. And I consistently wanted to keep going back and playing it. And even now, I want to replay it. But I don't feel that way for Resident Evil 3. But it did do a lot of really cool things that I really appreciated. And I would rather play 3 than RE1 any day of the week. Alright. The next game is Code Veronica. In Code Veronica, we're going to put Code Veronica ahead of RE1. Now, Code Veronica I think is fine. I've only ever played it once, which is not super great. This is like one of those games that I haven't played enough times to really go into. But I found Code Veronica to be okay. It's a little linear at times, but I definitely did enjoy what it was having to offer. I think its story is ridiculously stupid, and that's like fun. Sometimes just like a really bad story can be pretty fun, but some of the puzzles were pretty good. Some of the encounters are pretty good. It does have a really terrible boss battle with Steve, and it's got a few terrible boss battles, like the tyrants, the tyrant before the plane, the tyrant on the plane. But at the same time, I did like going to the different facilities. I thought that was pretty cool. You get to traverse throughout the world, so it's a little bit different linear. We kind of always went to... We never been to a snow place. We haven't been to a snow area yet, so I like that. And I liked the lore that was going on with the family. I thought that was pretty cool. Like the creation of Nosferatu, I found to be pretty engaging. Overall, I think Code Veronica had some pretty bad bosses, so it's not like gunning up here. It's going to be at like sort of the baseline. I think it's better than RE1. Does some more interesting and engaging stuff with item usage and a little bit more creative puzzles than RE1, but I don't think it's like getting any higher than just being better than RE1. I say that, but the next game is Resident Evil 0, and I liked Code Veronica better than Resident Evil 0. Again, this is a game I've only ever played once. I haven't played it more than once yet, but I also like... It's kind of like this is the row of games that I liked playing, but I have no interest in replaying again. I'm going to, when we make the actual tier list video, but like the swapping between the two characters, I never got used to. I always found it to be just really weird. I would just play as one of these characters. Usually Billy, because he could just take more damage and I can just be worse at video games while playing as him. But it didn't really matter, right? I would just play as one of the characters and then like run off, do a whole bunch of stuff, and then like only switch to an allied character or the other one whenever I absolutely had to, right? And I don't know exactly if that really was the best use of this sort of multi-character dynamic. I don't think it was particularly used very well, or at least I didn't use it very well, which led to the game itself not being particularly memorable. But I did enjoy it. I do think it does a lot of really cool puzzles. I think it has a lot of really interesting level design. I was trying to think of the words. The fact that they keep enemies respawning, or not respawning, not resetting. Enemies not resetting in rooms really led to a much more interesting sort of dynamic, and I did think that they did some cool stuff some of the time in the game, and which again puts it above Resident Evil original. But I do like Code Veronica. I think they're pretty similar in quality, at least from my memory. But I just liked Code Veronica's because I didn't have to switch between characters. I really did not like the switching between characters. The next game up on the list is Resident Evil Remake, and if you know me and my channel, it's one of my favorite games ever. I would consider all of these to be classic Resident Evil games, and I would consider Resident Evil Remake to be the best classic Resident Evil game. I think it has the most incentive to keep replaying the game because they keep adding higher difficulties that do a little bit more than just change stats around. You have real survival, you have invisible enemies, you have when the guy starts chasing you around, you have all these different costumes, you have different ways things can play out between saving Barry, saving Chris, saving Jill, saving Rebecca, etc., with a lot more dynamics, which do exist in RE1, but this game is just such a better version of RE1. It's the reason like why Resident Evil Remake is like the standard for remakes that has almost never been topped, if ever. I think it's a highly enjoyable game. It's so good. I made a whole 20-minute video about why this game is really, really good. Like, I love this game. I think it's easily the best classic Resident Evil game. And what do you know, coming up next is Resident Evil 4, another game I made a 20-minute video about. And it's also one of my favorite video games ever. Like, it just is. I think this is one of the best third-person shooters ever. It's on a completely different style of game than anything else before. It's incredibly linear. There's, like, no puzzles in the game. And it's all just about third-person action, but it also does a pretty good job of conveying horror and, intenseness. Right? There's a lot of tension is the word I want, not tenseness. I think there's a lot of tension in the game, and I feel like it does a really good job of incentivizing sort of different playthroughs by either making the game harder because there's no dynamic difficulty modifier throughout the game on professional, but also with the different weapons you can use and the different sort of strategies you can start implementing. And the better you are at the game, the more resources you can end up having. And I really did enjoy, I love Resident Evil 4. I think most people love Resident Evil 4. It's a really good game. It's got a really fun, stupid story that's really enjoyable. And I think just on a mechanic level alone, it's so much better than what came before it. It really started embracing and sort of leaned Resident Evil into it made it seem like it was going to go into a much more action horror sort of direction, which maybe the next few games don't really take into consideration. But we're going on to Resident Evil 5, which I got in a little bit of a tough with this on stream. Resident Evil 5 is super fun. The reason I'm putting Resident Evil 5 here, this is going to be the biggest. I think these two are going to be the biggest contention, I think, is people are going to want Resident Evil 3 to be up a lot higher, or they want Resident Evil 5 to be at the absolute worst rank. But I think RE5 single player is terrible. I think RE5 single player is down here, right? It's not good. But co-op, it's, in my opinion, one of the best cooperative games ever created. I honestly do think that. I have several friends. I'm going to be bragging. But I have several friends who would be willing to right now if they were not working. If I was to ask them, hey, do you want to play Resident Evil 5? They'd be like, yeah, dude, let's go play Resident Evil 5. Oh my god, yeah, let's go. And this was such a fun game. I recently played it again on stream, co-op, and that's just the way to play it. And you look at this you look at the list of these games down here, right? And for my money, why am I playing RE1 when I can play Remake? Why am I playing Resident Evil 2, or why am I playing Resident Evil 0 when I can play Remake, or Resident Evil 2? Why am I playing Code Veronica when I can play Remake, And if I want a more action-heavy sort of style, then I got Resident Evil 4, right? For all the action games that are down here. But if I want to play a really good co-op game, here's Resident Evil 5. There's no other co-op Resident Evil game here. It's just that's just not on the table. And this is such a good co-op game. I know it's going to be really hard to contend with, but single player, I agree that it's down here. But co-op, man, you're just not getting it from any of these other games. Because 6 is down here. 6 is a bad game. Alright? And no amount of watching Gaming Brit's videos telling me that it's actually better than I think it is going to make me not be bored out of my mind playing these games. They're linear. They're super linear. More linear than 5. And they're boring. They're so long. And there is co-op in 6. But why play 6's co-op? Why play this long, boring co-op game when you could just play 5's co-op? And then why are you playing this long, boring action game when you can just play 4? It's long, it's boring, and it's stupid. It's fun sometimes, but its biggest sin is how boring it is. It's so boring. It kills me. Kills me how boring this game is. The game where Leon Kennedy finally meets Chris Redfield, and it's so fucking... It's just such a snooze fest. Anyway, I forget if Resident Evil 6 came out before or after Revelations, but Revelations is going to be here. I think it's a solid game. I think it's the best of the solid games. It does a pretty good job of having reasonable 4-like mechanics. I think it's put in a pretty interesting setting. I found the setting to be pretty good, honestly. I thought that was really unique. You don't really hang out on boats anymore. Unfortunately, you do have to play as some of the other idiots from time to time, not on the boat. But I feel like the boat was actually pretty good. I felt they took a pretty good direction for handheld games. And I really enjoyed it. I actually really enjoyed Resident Evil Revelations. I think it's a very solid game. I definitely, when I think about these 4 games here, I have the most fondness for Resident Evil Revelations. I found it just to be a lot of fun. It's not consistent. I think that's where these games kind of shine a little bit more, where they're consistently on a pretty good level, where Revelations, you sort of start playing as the characters who aren't Jill and you're not Chris, and then all of a sudden the games become a lot less, their quality decreases. That's a better way of saying that sentence. Their quality decreases as soon as you stop playing as Jill and Chris. But I mean, and the ending is really rushed and weird, but I like it. I like it. You never really go to the water in Resident Evil, and I think they did a pretty good job with the water game. I think it was actually pretty good. I've never played Revelations 2. I can't believe this game is episodic. I can't believe it. I can't believe they want me to pay more money to play this game. It's just not happening. I might get around to it if I ever meet that sub goal, but that's never... At the moment, I'm not playing this game. I have no interest. Anyway, Resident Evil 7, it's going to go on the guy who chases you, because Jack chases you on higher difficulties. I really liked Resident Evil 7. I really came around to it. I think it's pretty solid. I haven't played it since, what was it, 2017? I haven't played this game since 2017, so I really do want to go back to it. I want to go back to all these games. Less so these two, because I know them like the back of my hand. But like I do want to play these games again. The ones I haven't played a whole lot of. Because I did really like Resident Evil 7, and I still remember so much of it so well, as opposed to these games down here. And while it is a meme, because Resident Evil 2 is coming up here too, that these all have games with guys who chase you. This is still like, these are some really good games that all do some interesting stuff. I'll talk about RE2 in a second. But Resident Evil 7, I think, did first person really well. It's a really solid FPS. But it's also like really scary at times. It has really good visuals, and it put me in a setting that like the other games kind of sort of sometimes delve into, but not really. This sort of swamp-like shack is kind of like the guardhouse from Resident Evil 1. It's like kind of like the swamp from RE5, but not really. And you never go to like a stupid lab. You never really you go to a ship. It's not the same, right? And it did a good. This is probably the best narrative out of the entire series. I think 6 has the best story out of the entire series. And I feel like that also warrants it to be like pretty good too. It's hard. It's not like saying these games again aren't B tier, C tier. This is a good game. These are better than good. These are really good. And then these are, as I made videos about them, some of the best games ever. Like, in my mind, like, imagine this is Breath of the Wild. I would put, like, Breath of the Wild here. I think these games are better than Breath of the Wild, right? So, Resident Evil 2 being equal to Breath of the Wild in my mind, right? Like, I feel like that's... And I would put Resident Evil 5 co-op being equal to Breath of the Wild, for the record. But anyway, talk about Resident Evil 2 remake. One, this game's impossible to, like, remake 2. I guess we can call it Remake 2. This sounds wrong. But the Remake 2 is... I think it's better than these, because I think it's a really solid game. It has these, in my opinion, the second best... Oh, hiccups. It has the second best narrative of the series. I think the voice acting and the script in RE2 is a lot better, or Remake 2 is a lot better than RE2. Remake 2 also has some pretty good gameplay. Remake 2 falls short on like 3 levels, though. So the first one being that the zombies on every difficulty just take way too many hits. They take way too many hits for it to be like worth ammo. Like, it's just, it plays so differently than every other Resident Evil game, where you kind of have to shoot zombies because they walk really fast and they have like unacceptably large grabbing ranges. Their grab hitboxes are huge, and then yeah, and they just take a lot of damage to kill, so you can't like really avoid them. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. You can't really avoid them, but another thing that kind of goes against it is Mr. X. Well, Mr. X is a guy who chases you. He also is really tedious, right? Like, he's just really, like, on my first playthroughs, Mr. X was really scary, and then eventually just became like, oh my god, I'm so bored sitting in this room not doing anything because I'm waiting for this AI guy. Like, I'm just waiting for this AI to leave, right? Or inevitably, I just started, when I have to do the library puzzle, we have to move the bookshelves, right? I would just kite Mr. X out, move a bookshelf, have to go run back to the main hallway while dragging Mr. X by his heels with me, you know, and then then kite him all the way back into the library to move another bookshelf, right? It's just really boring. It's just, he's a very mechanically based thing. He's not like Nemesis, who when Nemesis shows up, you just gotta run away. And that's because when you run away from Nemesis, eventually you can go back to where you needed to go, and he's not gonna be there, right? But you can't really run away from Mr. X, because he's just gonna keep following you, and then just sort of lurk into the areas that he lurks in, right? You can't really do anything about it. There's areas Mr. X is going to just stay in until he teleports to where you are. I don't know. I just didn't find him anywhere near as engaging as Jack, or as anywhere near as engaging as specifically Nemesis. I think RE3 is the best out of these. I think it was RE3, Resident Evil 7, RE2. And then I think the biggest thing going against RE2, the absolute biggest thing really, is it kind of went to the question I was talking about earlier when I was defending Resident Evil 5 co-op, and it's, why am I playing RE2, right? Like, why am I playing Remake 2? It just has worse gun mechanics and enemy interactions than 4. It's got like less decision making and puzzles than Resident Evil Remake and RE2. Right? It just is like, it's a really good game, but for me, for this list, is I just don't think it beats anything above it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the game besides the two things I already complained about, but because of those two things, it kind of makes me go, well, yeah, well, if I want to be able to run around and plan routes and navigate a police station, I'll play the original Resident Evil 2. If I want to have like really good engaging puzzles and try to speedrun stuff, I'm going to play RE1. If I want to have a really good action third-person shooter game, I'm going to play Resident Evil 4. If I want to have a game where I can do bits and pieces of all that stuff and like a pretty consistent quality, I'll play Remake 2. Like, again, I'm putting Remake 2 above these other games here, and they're all good games. I think this is like a really exciting thing about Resident Evil, is that I would say that all of these games, except for 6, are good games. They're good games worth your time to play. Like, I would recommend that you play every single one of these, particularly Resident Evil 5 co-op. No, but I'd recommend all these games, except for 6. I think that really like stands to it. Like, this would be like 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Right? I think being an 8 out of 10 game is pretty good, right? I think it's pretty good, honestly. It's just, it doesn't, when I was playing Remake 2, through every playthrough, including the first one, I would have thoughts of being, why am I playing this game over the other, like, over these 3? All right? Over these 5, right? And that's just kind of like where I ended up sitting down. But I did really enjoy Remake 2, and I kind of want to go back to it and see if my opinions are going to change or not. I want to go back to most of these games, except for the ones that I've played countless times before, and see if my opinion changes. And then we'll make an actual tier list where we actually go in and give actual mini reviews of everything, instead of me going, I don't really remember that much of 0, but I probably didn't like it as much as I don't really remember a lot, so it's going to be down here. I don't remember a lot of Code Veronica. I don't remember a lot of, this stuff. I want to go back in and really try this. I'm probably not playing Revelations 2. That's probably not happening, but it is what it is. And that's the video.